So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker of the day. Amber has over 20 years in the e-learning industry, and she has experiences ranging from training to industrial design to full development and customer experience. Amber leads the custom development team in creating ELB's learning signature custom courses. So with that, Amber, take it away.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second here. Found out today it's a little bit of a process the way I like to do it. All right. We jump from all these different platforms, and I'm like, okay, what platform am I in? So thank you so much for joining us today. Today's session is really about moving beyond activity reporting and learning how to prove the true business impact of the training or the learning that you're assigning or creating. We're going to explore some strategies for consolidating data, connecting it to business KPIs, and creating an insight-driven ecosystem that your stakeholders and business can trust. And of course, we are going to talk about how AI can support those initiatives. All right, so first, we're going to jump to a poll. So if we're going to put a poll up here on the screen, which of these best describes your current challenges? Are you feeling like you have data silos? Maybe you're experiencing data is all over and you have too many platforms to pull from. Or maybe the metrics that you're just providing leadership for whatever reason are just not resonating with them. All right, we're going to give it a little bit here just to make sure that everybody gets ample time to go ahead and put in their thoughts. And everybody's, oh, it's getting close. It's getting close. We have the top two definitely are coming in strong. All right, we'll give it just a few more seconds. All right, so it looks like, if we can see, that it's kind of a very close to, there's too many platforms maybe to pull all the data from so that you can collate it and put it all together to create something meaningful, which is the first step when you have all of this. And then once you do all that, getting metrics that don't resonate with your leadership. So maybe it's not what they're looking for, or maybe it's just that you're not visualizing it in a way that they can understand. All right, so let's keep going. This, and sorry, just removing the poll. Jumping to our next slide. All right, so we're going to talk about what I like to call the credibility gap in the L&D space right now. A lot of times we are stuck in this activity-based reporting, and we're asking to show completions of our training, how many people attended our calls or participated in our webinars, how many training hours as an organization were logged, what are our course satisfaction scores, and the number of programs that we delivered this year. And all of these things are very easy to count, but they really don't tell the story of business impact. Your executive leaders really want to see an evidence of growth, productivity, and performance impact. So the gap becomes between what is reported and what is required kind of undermines your credibility and your team's credibility. So we want to move towards a more outcome-based way of showing our value as a team, really demonstrating how learning is enabling growth, agility, and measurable ROI. So was there any productivity changes? What was the time to competency? What were job performance improvements, sales growth, customer outcomes, employee retention, and business KPIs? What outcomes were we able to achieve with our learning? So this is a great place that if you're feeling like you're hearing something from your leadership and you can't get to the point of, what are they trying to get from an outcome? Like, this is a great time that you can use AI as kind of a sounding board on how to explore some of those kind of outcome-based impacts. These are great ones here on the screen just to like plug in and say, okay, I'm hearing these things. Can I show a productivity change or a time to competency? Can I outline that? And AI is really good at helping that framework and creating that framework. All right, so we have that credibility gap, and we're trying to move in the L&D space to something new, something different, which is where learning intelligence comes in. So think about this. There is, let's say you have a global sales team. I've worked with many global sales teams, and every quarter their L&D reports, they look great. There's thousands of completions, hundreds of training hours. There's always high satisfaction scores. But when leadership asks, how is this helping us sell more? We don't really have an answer for that, because all we can say is, well, there's completions, lots of hours are being spent, and high satisfaction. So at that point, the company I was working with, they began saying, okay, let's talk about this. So we started talking about ways to make those connections. So we started to connect the training data from the LMS with the performance data from the CRM tool. And suddenly we saw a clear pattern started to emerge. So we could then tell that data story, that reps who completed training ramped up to quota 30% faster and closed more deals in their first 6 months than those that did not complete the training. So then you have your value of that training. This was kind of a light bulb moment, because learning was no longer needed to be measured by the hours logged. That was good data, but it was now connected and tied directly to the business KPIs. And this is really a shift from this kind of descriptive reporting that we've been used to providing, because that's what was asked of us for many, many, many years, to more predictive, decision-ready insights. So learning intelligence is consolidating data, connecting it to the outcomes, and then you're able to prove the impact at the business level. So really, it's all an exercise of connecting the dots. One of the biggest challenges isn't just the data itself. Most of the time, we all have that data or we know where to pull that data from, but it's our fluency in using it. So as leaders in the L&D space, if we can't connect learning insights to revenue or productivity or talent metrics, we don't really get to have a seat at the strategy table to make those decisions for the whole company. And that's when we get stuck in that reporting activity, we don't get to elevate up to strategic thinking. So data fluency really has become the new leadership currency and allows us to translate learning into a business language for our CEOs, our CFOs. We will be able to start to anticipate the questions that executives are going to ask about KPIs, about their return on investment if we spend this amount of money into training. And it really builds that trust with the finance teams, the HR, and your operational leaders. All right, so we're going to kind of we're going to talk about how we can get from tracking to predicting. So if we're stuck in that descriptive level and looking at reports and all the different data that we have that tells what happened, and we don't know how to get to the next predictive level. So our organization and our leadership needs those predictive insights. They need to know, which programs accelerate the time to competency. Can we answer that question? What are skill gaps that are likely to emerge, perhaps if they did take this training or if they did not? What kind of metrics can we see or prove because of that? What's the impact of learning on performance and retention? And that's really where that's the level where L&D shifts from being kind of a call center to being a true driver of growth. And if your L&D team is seen as a driver of growth, you're going to get funding, you're going to get the ability to explore creating really exciting learning experiences that hey, these are the behaviors that we want to see. These are the outcomes we can connect those behaviors to. So what kind of data do we need to have in order to connect those? And so when we start to speak with that mindset and start to tell those data stories, it gets easier and easier and easier until your team is, anytime the company is like, okay, we need, a KPI of this, or we need to change this behavior, they come to you first. And that's really where we want to get so that we have that strategic seat. Okay, so descriptive data, it's going to tell us what happened. So for an example, 50 employees finished onboarding this quarter. Well, that was faster than usual. Diagnostic data kind of tells you, why did that happen? For example, employees finished faster because we added a mentorship program and where we're trying to get to. These are all things that, you can ask and you can tell. Predictive data tells you, okay, what's likely to happen next? So based on current trends, when you look at the data, new hires who take the mentorship track will reach full productivity 30% faster. That's really what your leadership wants to know. So when you hear predictive, think about forecasting the future outcomes from the current data. So our goal is always to let our data tell the story. But in order to do so, we have to know what those outcomes need to be and how to connect that story. All right. So a lot of you had said that one of the big reasons that you struggle sometimes collating your data is that you have disconnected systems, or maybe you have multiple systems. So having all of these different disconnected systems really drain your L&D's credibility and really the effectiveness overall. Think about like how much time you and your team spend pulling CSVs, pulling data from different platforms, and then you're trying to stitch them all together. You're trying to make sense of mismatched taxonomies. And by the time the report is actually ready, this decision window has already passed. Leadership has already said, oh, this is what we're going to do. You aren't able to kind of have any weight into that decision. And this isn't just inefficiency, it becomes then lost opportunities for your team and your organization. When data isn't integrated, insights are delayed, a lot of errors kind of creep in. Leaders are going to start losing trust in your numbers. With a platform sprawl, it creates kind of like this noise instead of any kind of clarity. And that really undermines our ability to then influence those strategic decisions in a timely manner. So how many systems would you say on average your team is pulling from? You can put those in the chat and see, let's all of us say how many systems we think we're pulling from. I know personally, even in our company, we are pulling from at least 2 or 3. And that's after trying to streamline. And I can see things coming through. I know that gets things, it's very difficult because you are getting all this data. And in order to tell the story from what I like to call the raw data, you have to take the time to stitch it together. And that is another opportunity where AI can come in to help and help us save time in doing that. All right, so let's take another poll really quick. And let me ask you, if you had one of your VPs ask you today, what impact is learning having on performance? How quickly do you think you could respond with credible, business linked, let's even say outcome-based data to give to them? All right. Everybody's putting in their answers and we'll go through here. think that, again, everyone is kind of moving in the same direction. All right, we'll just give it another second or so. Everybody to put their answers in. The answer to this question says kind of everything about whether your L&D team is going to be seen as a partner in strategy or just a support function. So across the board, it looks like no one says, hey, I can turn it around in minutes. I can same day even. You can say, okay, let me create this really quick for you. We have about 9% that can do it in minutes right now. Days, we have about 49% and weeks, 42%. Days, maybe you're busy. Okay, we want to try to get it down to like a day. Weeks is probably always going to be, in our current world, too long. And with the speed in which we are all moving, with the speed in which we have AI as one of our tools, we really want to get that down to days or a day. All right, let's move on here. Okay, so this is where we need to really focus on what matters. Metrics that matter right now for your organizations. There are hundreds of possible metrics, and the trick first is to zero in on the critical few. So your VP comes to you and says, I need to know the impact. Okay, so you sit there and you're like, okay, what is critical here? And maybe they tell you, and that's always helpful when they already give you that answer. However, if they don't, we can look at these critical few: performance impact, productivity, time to competency for our teams, retention and engagement across the board. And of course, as I said, if they give you our business KPIs, or they may just tell you, hey, this is what we care about right now. This is the behavioral change that we needed to see. This is what everybody in the industry is talking about right now. So we need to know with what you're doing if we're making an impact there. When you want to not create something that spews out, or sometimes I've seen like 10 pages of documentation that is given to VPs. And let me tell you, they're not looking through it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to stitch it together. They don't want to weed through it. We only want to report on the critical few. A one-pager that literally says and tracks these critical few items in a very visual way so that they can open that up, take a look at it and say, oh, wow, I really can understand. I can see the business impact. So when you report on these critical few, then you're not just tracking learning. You're not just giving completions. You're not giving raw data to them. And some people will say kind of showing your worth in that, well, the training that our team made, we had, 5,000 completions. So it's obviously great. But instead, we're showing the connection to business performance, which is really what matters. So first, let's notice, like if we create a dashboard here, how few metrics are on the screen here. This is a clean, simple dashboard with, you want to have 3 to 5 numbers, but big number metrics. Leaders don't have to wade through these 25 charts or 25 pieces of paper that have all the different completion rates. They want to see these 3 to 5 numbers that matter most. So let's kind of break this down. In this simple dashboard mock-up, we can see, okay, time to competency. This measures how quickly new hires or learners reach their full productivity. A 15% improvement here would not save time. It accelerates revenue, reduces onboarding costs, shortens the gap between hiring and performance. So that may not be, let's say your leadership said, hey, I really need that to be 30%. So then guess what? Like, we're going to say that, maybe show visually that that's not enough, maybe in red or an arrow or things like that, so that immediately they see, hey, here's my dashboard, here's the data. The team also knows whether or not what they're doing is effective and perhaps already has a plan on how to fix that. If we look at sales productivity, you can link training data with the CRM data, and we can actually show how learning drives performance. So a 10% lift in productivity tied to a sales training program makes for a clear case for ROI. So if we maybe explain a product better in our training, and all of a sudden you see sales on that product improve by 10%, that's a direct correlation that you can pull from and make a clear case for. Employee retention, engagement, and growth opportunities are really kind of the leading drivers of retention. So if we can show that learners who complete targeted programs are staying longer, that's a direct line to reducing turnover costs. So this could be in the form of mentorship programs. This could be in the form of, self-help, or, wellness programs are really popular right now. And we see that across the board, when we evaluate data, we can see that those programs do in fact improve employee retention if done properly. Great metric. Every company wants to save money there on turnover. So if you notice what's happening here, each metric is then tied to a business outcome. Executives already care, something they already care about. So that could be cost savings, revenue growth, retention. But anytime we give data to our leadership, that's the picture and the bridge that we need to build. Finally, the design of your dashboard does matter. You need to have big numbers, clear trends, and a very simple story. Executives should be able to take a glance at your dashboard and instantly see how your team and the learning and trainings that you create, your initiatives, how they contributed to the business goals. And that tells your department story. It tells the story of, if you're a consulting firm, how effective that consultation is. It can tell the story across the board. All right. Now that we know what metrics we want to measure, and that it's important to only measure few, the question then becomes, how do we actually get there? And that is when you take a look at architecture and consolidation strategies. So most organizations, they're going to start with 3 or 4 main systems. You're going to have maybe your LMS, your LXP, maybe your HRIS, or your CRM. And some companies might have a performance management platform. Now, the trick isn't to connect everything at once. That's, if you're waiting to do that, most of your companies are going to be like, no, that's like a long-term, 10-year plan. So it's great to just start to build a pathway where data from each system can flow into maybe a central consolidation layer. That could be a middleware, it could be a data warehouse, it could be a BI tool, it could even truly be an Excel worksheet. From there, then you can visualize the story in a clean dashboard like what we just saw. And the important part, though, is that if you can't get it all together, just pick 1 or 2 to start with. And it could be something like, if you put your LMS data and your HRIS data, you can show your onboarding impact. Or maybe it's just your LMS data and your CRM data will show your sales performance impact. So build with 1 or 2 systems. And like I said, it can even be put in a Excel worksheet that then you can then feed into an AI tool to say, okay, here are the outcomes I'm looking for. Help me tell this story. So instead of thinking it, a lot of our organizations for many years, we've kind of thought about it as kind of crawl, walk, run. And instead, let's frame it that this is a learning data maturity model. This maturity model gives you a roadmap that you can grow into. You can scale it step by step. at a really kind of foundational level, the priority is first to connect your systems, establish a reliable single source of truth, or a place where all that data is stored that you know at least you have it all together. And then at the insight driven level, you are then going to start thinking predictively, and you're going to start linking that learning, you're going to link that data to the KPIs and to the outcomes that matter most for your business. So productivity, retention, and revenue. So at that predictive level, you're then using kind of your advanced analytics to forecast, hey, these are some skill gaps we see that are going to happen, or we've seen in the past when we've done this, these were the skill gaps we saw. So then you can predict the impact of your learning programs, and you can already be making those recommendations and those recommendations of interventions kind of automatically. So you can start to say, hey, year over year, last year, we saw these kind of skill gaps, which perhaps caused injury or something like that. So you can paint the picture and do a story with data that then allows your leadership to immediately say, oh, I need this kind of safety training. And then once you put that safety training in place on your roadmap, then you can start building the picture. Hey, it was effective because of this. We noticed that now in this site, there has been, 30% less safety issues. Data like that tells that story. So as we try to bring it all together in what you can take away to create, we've talked about why data fluency matters, kind of the cost that it's actually costing you to have all these disconnected systems, and the critical metrics that you need to focus on, and how to really structure your overall ecosystem. So you can create a learning intelligence playbook for your organization. And this playbook is really how you move from having all this data and kind of chaos to a business clarity. And you can create this playbook and roadmap for your company, for your L&D team to follow. That will then, your CEOs and your CFOs are going to trust that all the metrics coming from this are going to be reliable. So at a foundational level, again, you're going to connect your systems, have a single source of truth, and that's really going to become your credibility anchor. And like I said, it can be a single placement for that data. And then at the insight-driven level, you're going to narrow in on the metrics that matter most: time to competency, productivity, retention, or what other business KPIs maybe you're given. And then at the predictive level, you're going to bring in all those analytics and AI to help you forecast skill gaps, performance outcomes, so you can act before problems appear. And then lastly, at your impact level, you're going to be consistently showing your executives how learning drives business goals, how it drives business growth, and that is what is going to earn your team trust, influence, and investment. So your playbook becomes an intelligent system that powers your business decisions. It allows you to present to executives, show all of this and what you are going to do for them, and what the reporting that you're going to provide for them is going to look like in the future. Now, some of you may be thinking, yep, that sounds great, but my team doesn't have a bench of learning architects. We don't have people sitting around to build nice dashboards or to collect data, and that's why it's taking days and weeks. So that's where we use AI. And AI can do three really big things for you. It can be the tool that helps ingest and consolidate that data. So like I said, if you can even get it into an Excel sheet or several Excel sheets or Word documents or whatever the export is from your systems, and feed it in, it will create a normalized data set for you so that you have a starting point and really that benchmark. Then it can help you analyze and predict. AI doesn't just crunch the numbers for you. It can spot patterns and it can forecast outcomes. It can analyze data in seconds where it would take us maybe a full day to kind of make those connections. For example, if you can, you know, it can tell you that employees who finish specific programs are 20% more likely to hit quota. So it can immediately ingest that data and give out that prediction. And then really it can visualize and recommend. So, and if you can create an AI powered dashboard, an AI powered dashboard doesn't just display your metrics. It's going to highlight any kind of oddities, any kind of trends, and even some suggested actions. Now, again, AI is not perfect, so maybe some of those actions are not the ones that we want to take. However, it starts to churn those ideas in your head. So if you logged in and you see, oh, sales ramp time dropped 12%, so you need to continue the onboarding strategy, that helps you have a benchmark, and you can start really leaning into that. And this is done with, prompting, feeding in the outcomes you're looking for, asking for patterns you want to see, and it really it moves you from that reporting to real decision support in a really fast way. And instead of it taking you weeks of manual work and exports and cleaning up Excel pivots and dashboard tweaking and compressing it, it does it in real time, and it's trusted insights. Now, obviously, we all know we still need to review them, and we still need to make sure that, the data is accurate and all of that. But if we start with a learning focused analytics tool, there are tools like Watershed out there that you can use to just pull in all of the data so that it can analyze the learnings. You can use a BI platform like Power BI to consolidate that data, and then layer on that AI feature for prediction and decision ready insights. Now, if you're as simple as, hey, I can't get approval for all these tools, you can just say, okay, well, but what I can do is get it in Excel. I can prompt AI. I can even prompt AI on the proper prompts to get the outcomes I'm looking at. So if, let's say, you're like, oh, I don't know how to ask this question, you can ask AI. You can say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to do. These are the metrics I want to connect to with this data. Can you help me do it? And sometimes it might take you 3 or 4 prompts looking at the data, but you will get there. And you will get there probably in hours, whereas that, you can get an answer to your VP the same day, whereas that maybe would have taken you a week before. So I know kind of zoomed through a lot of that. We've kind of defined what learning intelligence is. We really need to, as we are talking to our leadership, and everyone I know is trying to get funding and having those conversations for next year, we can explain, hey, there are costs when you have data silos and when you have things all over the place. And when we as a team can't identify the metrics that really matter, we don't have any credibility with our leadership. We are not being the partner probably that they're even looking for. We also took a look at how to architect a connected ecosystem where all your data is being pulled together. Maybe, like I said, start with 1 or 2 areas that you can provide correlation, and then, expand from there. And we've also explored how AI can accelerate that visualization process and help you build those insights. And after you've kind of prompted AI and you've put all that in, what you're looking for, what you want the outcome to be, it might give you back a bunch of data as well. So it's really important, though, that you go back to your thought process around a design dashboard to make sure that it may give you so much data that you say, hey, you know what? I only need the top 3 points that tell me these things. And that way you simplify again, because remember, your executive leadership teams, they want to see the data very clearly in a simple way, telling a data story, allowing them in a glance to know exactly what, 1, has been done this year, 2, predicting what you think should happen next year based on all of these results, to kind of help grow the business and reach KPIs that the business has. So don't stay in the drama zone of data. Start small. Pick one system to consolidate, one metric that matters, build it from there. Um, if you need help with any of your AI initiatives as a company, ELB Learning definitely has those resources. Give us a call. We have strategists for that. If you'd want to kind of take a deeper dive, we've created a resource that outlines the frameworks and includes practical steps to get started. You can also take back this deck and go through it. And I've seen teams take this and create presentations for their leadership for the next year that shows their leadership, hey, here's going to be our playbook for our team. This is what we are going to do. This is how we're going to start showing you metrics. These are the AI tools we're going to use. These are the things that we are going to be able next year to show consistently on a weekly basis to you. And that's going to build that confidence that really, really allows you to have that seat at the table, have that seat in making decisions in what your organization should do next, and how training and learning and all of the things we do make an impact, and how we can show all of the impacts that your teams are making. All right, so now I know that was a lot. I do want to open it up for any kind of Q&A for the last 10 minutes or so, and just kind of go through, some of the questions that maybe have been put into the chat.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think we're at like 3 or 4 questions. And this one was really good. I don't know if it was specifically a question. There wasn't a question mark, but I thought the comment was good, and I thought maybe this would be super helpful. So I apologize who it was. I did not capture that, but they mentioned that they worked in a small to medium organization where when you were showing the metrics framework, it doesn't exist for them and it needs to be built from scratch. And I know you mentioned some resources, but they were asking, would you suggest any specific resources that we can rely on to create this metric framework, as it doesn't exist currently in their organization?
That's a great question. I kind of get that question a lot of different times. Small to medium businesses, they're always needing that starting point. So again, if you look holistically across all industries, retention matters. So that's a great metric that you want to always kind of zero in on. Safety matters. Safety is pretty important. I don't know what your business is, but in general, there's got to be a safety element. Time to competency, if it's sales, anything like that, showing those metrics. And even just sitting down with and it's a lot of small to medium businesses have the ability to do this. Sit down with your CEOs and say, hey, what are we trying to do next year? What's your vision for next year? And ask them even what their KPIs for the new year are. And maybe it's that, hey, as a company, we need to increase, revenue by 20%. Okay. So as an L&D team, think about, how can we help do that? What kind of training would facilitate our people and different groups of people to do so? And a lot of times creating a dashboard without any data in it and showing your CEO and saying, would this be helpful? Get their buy-in. And if you get their buy-in early on, then your outcomes are always going to align with that buy-in. So hopefully that answers that question on how I would start.
Perfect. A really great one was, there could be other factors than L&D interventions in influencing these KPIs. How can we justify these only with the L&D interventions?
Yeah, there definitely could be lots of other factors. I think that, L&D paints part of the picture. You're going to have to work with your other teams, your other leads in other parts of the organization to say, hey, what are those other factors? When you're working together and you build that relationship, you're helping each other out. You're helping each other kind of build that value. So that leadership team, especially, this happens a lot when it comes down to safety, because we know there's probably other factors. So they don't want to look bad either. So they want to look like they are putting measures in place for safety as well. So the conversation then becomes about collaboration within the teams and saying, okay, what do you want this year to change from a safety perspective or whatever? And we can help you do XYZ and create these learning programs, but we're going to need you to take care of these couple of things that we know are also creating that problem or are things that are not in the L&D control, because you're right, like not everything is. So that's when you really need to cross collaborate. And as a whole, like when I consult with businesses, all teams, all team leads, all parts of the organization really need to be collaborating if you really want to have traction in anything that you're doing. So just that cross collaboration between the organizations is really crucial.
Perfect. That kind of segues next to Serena's question, which is, what are the implications of AI hallucinations in L&D metric analyzing?
Yes. So that is a great question too, because hallucinations are a real problem. And so I know our teams have kind of spent, I would say, probably 40 to 60 when we build out a new model, about 40 to 60 ID hours to train the AI on, hey, if this type of question or this type of data presents, do this. And that really helps train the AI not to hallucinate. So again, it takes about 40 or 60 hours from what my teams are telling me at this point to really get to training a model that will not hallucinate. And it's even getting to like the granular that like if somebody you see a number that says like 100.00 that you automatically take off the 0.00 so that it doesn't impact your entire data set. So like little things like that to think through and train your model to ensure that that is the case. So at a baseline, you want to really be using, you don't want to be using like a standard like ChatGPT or something like that. You want to have an enterprise kind of AI model that is specific to your enterprise so that you can take the time to train it so that your data sets are really relevant and they don't hallucinate.
Perfect. Now we have about time for about one more question, but there were tons of questions about how do I train prompting. So totally reach out to the ELB team to talk a little bit more about that. And I bet there's plenty of resources that this team has to help with that. But I did like this one question. What suggestions do you have on using data and AI tools in terms of I believe it's PII, and getting permissions to use AI tools for data analysis, especially in the HR and L&D environment?
So I I think when you generally will get a enterprise specific version that has kind of some of those privacy features already added, if you can get approval for that, then putting the data in becomes less risky. I know with HR and it's personal data, you do have to be careful there. But again, if it's enterprise level and it's specific to your team, even like maybe just the HR team has their own so that that data doesn't get mixed and shared, then putting in those kind of frame that boundary and having that you're usually pretty safe with. Like there's kind of like documentation all over the internet now saying all the privacy practices that are being put in place at like an enterprise level. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to get buy-in from your entire organization that that's the route they're going. And I know everybody's dealing with the same thing because everyone's being told use AI, but be careful about AI. And so like I know that's very confusing. So I just have to say, as a baseline, we pretty much tell everyone you either need to have an enterprise license. A lot of times we are building models that are specific to that company, adding extra layers of privacy on top of that just to ensure that we don't run against that because, you know, especially for if you get into like a financial institution, then we have to have like 10 layers of security. So all of that to say that there are ways around it. And I know at ELB, we have strategists who will walk you through all the different options of like your own model, how to train your model. And, you know, we really try to empower you because this isn't going away. AI is not going away. So we want to empower you to use it as a tool. And we really just do the setup and the training to help kind of empower you to utilize it.
Perfect. Well, that is all the time we have left. Like I said, those questions that didn't get answered, I promise you the ELB team will be receiving those and will be reaching out. But with that, Amber, is there anything else you'd like to leave with the audience today before we head off for our first break?
I guess just thank you so much for joining. And if you do have any kind of, questions with AI or any questions that we can help with, please feel free to go onto our website. We have a consultation form you can fill out, and we'll have a strategist call you and really walk through kind of your AI needs. So as we have really pushed into AI transformation, we have an entire team dedicated to AI transformation and really consulting with companies.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amber. I was about to say there's so many questions, so your inbox will be bumping after this, but it's always a good thing. We're always here and happy to help. So thank you again so much, Amber.